So you'll see that little alert right there. And Mr. Long, you'll hear a note that says we're recording. That's how you know you're good to go.
Okay, thank you, Seth. Good evening, everybody. The school committee just ended our executive session, so at this point, I will entertain a motion to exit executive session and begin the regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
I'll do a roll call vote. Lindblom,
Yes.
Gates,
Yes.
Borkowski,
Yes.
and Long, yes. Okay. So at this point, I will call the open regular meeting to order in response to Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency order, executive order dated March 12, 2020. Town of Scituate public meetings will meet remotely. This meeting will be recorded and will be posted following the meeting. Due to the Facebook issues that were going on today, this will be live streamed through YouTube and not through Facebook tonight. So it'll be available through the Scituate TV YouTube channel. Public comment will be available through the Zoom meeting. Community members can also email me at mlong@cit.org. So at this point, we'll move forward into the agenda. And the next item up is celebrate student learning with the ECC.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm Jessica Baird. I'm one of the teachers here. I'm just going to share my screen, and there's going to be about 3 of us who are presenting tonight. Lisa, whenever you're ready.
Hi, so I'm Lisa Peralta. I'm the Early Childhood Coordinator, and I'm going to be doing the first few slides. We just want to thank you all for allowing us to be here tonight and present. Jess, I'm not sure, you might want to mute just because the feedback. Oh.
Are you two, Lisa and Jessica, are you near each other? You may need
We
to
are.
move away. Yep. You may need to move away just a little bit.
All right.
There you go.
Try this and see if it works. Is it any better or no?
Not a lot, but it's all right. You don't have to be. You don't know.
Is that?
Yep.
I moved classrooms. Hopefully that's better.
That's fantastic, Lisa. You sound great.
Great. So I have the first few slides, and then Jess will take a few as well. But we just want to thank you all for allowing us to be here tonight and present. We're pretty excited. We really got together and we thought, since this is one of the first times that we've presented at school committee, we thought it might make the most sense to just kind of do an overview of our program and what a typical day looks like here in the ECC. We thought that would be a really neat way to start our slides, start our slideshow. So Jess, if you want to go to the next slide. So we thought it'd be really fun to start off finding a senior who actually attended with us in the early childhood program. So this is Avery. She's graduating this year as a senior, and these are her 2 photos. A photo of her now in senior year, and also her photo that she took with us in the early childhood program back when she was 3. We also asked her to think of a memory or a quote or something that reminds her of the ECC. And so she gave us, sometimes you'll never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory, which I just love. So we just thought it was fun to see from start to finish kind of that educational journey you can take here at Scituate. And she actually had one of the teachers that's with us still in this program, and who's probably on here with us tonight, which is kind of fun too, just to think about that those teachers are still here. So next slide, Jess. So just who we are, a little bit about us is just we provide programming to students ages 3 to 5. And we provide programming, instruction, and support to children that are typically developing, as well as those with special needs. These are a couple photos of our program. And then the next slide, we just give some interesting facts about us, that we are actually the largest special ed program in the district. And we have about 5 or 6 spots in each integrated classroom for students with IEPs. And then we have 10 more additional slots for students that are peer models. And these are all in one integrated classroom. And then we also have an ELC sub-separate program, which gives us support for intensive special needs. And then we also do services for speech, OT, PT. Next couple slides are the wonderful people that help make up this program. There's a lot, so we won't name each one specifically, but roughly we have 4 special education teachers. We have an SLP that provides service just to our department. We have PT and OT. We also have support of the TVI for the district. And on the next slide, we have even more people. I'm in there. Obviously, we have the support of Tracy Reardon, who's the principal for Wampatuck. Obviously, Mrs. Bobert, who's the director of special ed. We also have a district-wide BCBA that provides support, the school nurse, the adjustment counselor, the school psychologist. These are all people that we can call on at any time to help us with anything that we might need in our program. And it's just a great team. And then last but not least, in terms of our support staff, is our paraprofessionals, of which without we'd be lost. They're amazing. We're very lucky to have them. We have many that have been with us for many years. Obviously, the numbers of them vary according to the students' needs over the years. We didn't even get to have all of them in this photo because they're working with students, so it was hard to get them all together. But we're super happy and lucky to have them as part of our program. So that's just some basic info and who makes up the program. And now Jess will go into some slides that give you more detail about what a day would look like here in the ECC.
Great, thanks, Lisa. So we just want to start off with our educational philosophy. The program is designed to help children gain social, emotional, physical, and intellectual skills that are appropriate to each child's age, background, stage of development, and individual considerations, of course, such as defined disabilities or learning differences. We recognize different learning styles and utilize a variety of teaching methods to offer numerous avenues for student self-expression and success. Just a little bit about our program. So we do have 2 half-day integrated classrooms that run morning and afternoon. We have 1 full-day integrated classroom. We also have 1 day full-day substantially separate classroom, which is called the ELC, the Early Learning Center, which I teach. This classroom is designed to support students with IEPs who are still learning the foundational skills of being at school. But these students are given multiple inclusion opportunities throughout their day as they are successful. Our program does run Monday through Thursday for students, but we always joke that the Fridays are our busiest day. Fridays are filled with evaluations mostly. We test students from early intervention that are going to be turning 3 if they are eligible for special education services after their 3rd birthday. They would be able to come to our program. We also get townwide referrals from anywhere for students who are 3 to 5 from local preschools or who are still just at home. And some kiddos who are right here who are just a little bit concerned about, and we'll bring them in on a Friday to get a better look at them. On Fridays, we also do all of our report writing, IEP meetings, team meetings, parent meetings, you name it, we do it. We don't get prep throughout the week, so Fridays are our day to do everything. And then our curriculum is pretty broad. These are a bunch of things that we touch upon. I just wanted to focus on a few. Just like K-12, we do follow the MAS curriculum frameworks. We do have our own set of guidelines that we follow to make sure that we're preparing these kiddos for the K-12 learning environment. However, we make that more fun. We do thematic-based units. Right now, for example, we're doing farm and fall. So we're getting all of those learning objectives in there while still keeping it fun. So maybe we're painting with apples and, playing with the barn, and then also using Play-Doh to make our letters. So we're a very multi-sensory approach. We also have a couple of social emotional curriculums, such as Second Step and social thinking. We're big on social emotional development because we feel that that's the foundation of being a strong lifelong learner. And we also use a great handwriting without tears curriculum which our awesome OT helps us out with. Not only is it great for, handwriting, of course, but it's also about letter development. There's a great multi-sensory approach there as well. And our biggest thing is we want to foster independence and early readiness skills for kiddos. So just to quickly go through a day in the life of ECC, students arrive at the door, we're greeted by their teachers, we're fostering that independence. They walk all the way down into their classrooms, follow morning routines, put their things away, usually do a little bit of a check-in. Then we'll typically have free play. And while this sounds like, oh, great, you're just playing with kids all day, this is the heart and soul of our day. Free play not only teaches students to share, work together, try something different. Some of our students are actually learning how to play. They've never been taught to play, or they just need a little bit more support in that sense. So this is really the lifeblood of our day. And so you'll see that sometimes free play will go on for 45 minutes. We're not just playing, we're doing all those great things in there. Like the great Fred Rogers said, play is really the work of childhood. So we're really making sure that we get a ton of sensory exploration in there, and also a lot of teamwork, collaboration, social skills. And then we have our centers, which is basically our free play, but structured. So there's a lot of opportunity for play, but this is where we do our crafts, our special activities. We make sure that students have an exposure to school tools, scissors, glue, crayons, markers, pencils, whatever is appropriate. And we also use a variety of senses. So like I was talking about earlier, maybe they're painting with apples, using Play-Doh. We'll have a sensory table in each room that rotates throughout our themes. So centers is just a little bit more of a structured free play, and they'll usually be based off of our themes. So if the theme is community helpers, maybe they'll have a fireman's puzzle that they're doing at the rug. And this is just a few more of our centers. Like we said, we really just try and make it broad. We like to make it inviting, inciting. We understand that not every child wants to sit and play with Play-Doh, so we make things that are a lot more diverse so every student has something they can engage with. And then every classroom has circle. While every circle is run just a little bit differently based on teachers' learning style, we mostly will have a calendar, we'll sing greeting songs, we'll sing hello to each student, we'll follow the directions of listening, turn taking, answering questions, all those things that are really tricky for those 3 and 4-year-olds, so that by the time when they get to kindergarten, first grade, this is a breeze. They totally know what the expectations are. A lot of times we'll do songs that are related to our themes, we'll use instruments, we'll play games, just a big whole group learning activity. And then another time that people think that is just more play, but is really awesome for social interaction is the playground. A lot of my students in particular have the most success for social interactions on the playground because we really get that gross motor in there and they feel a little bit more confident and they're more willing to play things like tag, chase, turn taking on the slide. You can hear like one of my students was asked to go down the slide by another kiddo. So we really get a lot of that great social play. And then they pack up and go home. And especially if you're in that 2.5-hour class, that flies by. We cram a lot into that 2.5 hours and we'll be looking at the clock and like, oh my goodness, we have to go grab our bags. So we really try and jam everything we can into those few hours. And now I'm going to turn it over to our awesome occupational therapist, Mrs. Daniels.
If Miss Daniels is here, I may need her to raise her hand. I do not. Yep. One moment. Miss Daniels, if you want to unmute yourself, you most certainly can right now.
Thank you so much.
You're very
Okay.
welcome.
I was trying to do that, but it wasn't working. All right. I am going to be giving you the caboose of this presentation, and Jess told you about the day-to-day. I'm going to tell you about the things that make the ECC unique and special. There are so many things, but I'm just going to try to capture the highlights. I've been with the Scituate Public Schools for 15 years. I'm a district-wide employee, but I am happy to say that for all of those 15 years, I've been the OT at the ECC, and it is my genuine privilege to be here. I think one of the ways that we show our students that we care and that we are really involved is that we help to meet them exactly where they're at, and we do that by really addressing their developmental needs. And I think the way we use our spaces shows that we are in tune with that. Part of our spaces are motor spaces, and the pictures to the left are some examples of our motor room. And for some of our students, they just need a little bit more input in terms of sensory and motor development. So these are students that may need a little bit more opportunity to jump and climb and swing and squish and get all that kind of input in. And we have a dedicated space for that. You can see that special equipment there to the left. We also have, if you've ever been to the ECC before, and if you haven't, I encourage you to come and visit us, what's called the small gym. And small is a relative term because it really is a pretty big space. All of our classrooms sort of feed into this space. It's a multi-purpose space, but it is a large area where we're able to bring various kinds of equipment in, which we rotate different kinds of equipment in there. And the reason we love this space is that we can even if the weather is inclement, we can still use this space to work on those gross motor skills. And that's great because little ones definitely need to move their bodies. So this lovely picture of this smiling child, she's using a scooter board and you can see that trampoline behind her. So we'll frequently rotate equipment into this area just to keep it fun and interesting. You'll see this small gym in a few of the pictures that are coming up as well. Okay, Jess. Oh, special days. We have so many special days at the ECC, but by far Halloween is one of our favorites. Everybody gets involved, staff and students. We were very nervous last year that our Halloween parade wasn't going to happen as it usually does. Within the Wampatuck School, typically we go throughout the building. We visit all of the classrooms. The older students love to see the ECC students parading through. But with COVID, thanks to Mrs. Reardon, we took our parade outside last year and it was great. The kids got a chance to take a mask break, the older students. That picture to the left is my favorite picture. That's our speech therapist, Erica Vercoloni. And I think this is where fashion meets function because what preschooler doesn't love the song, The Wheels on the Bus? So she got to really sing that song about 50 times that day. And I think she was eliciting a lot of language skills, but that was a great opportunity for her to, work speech into her costume that day. All right, thanks, Jess. More special days. We are really very fortunate in Scituate, and I know that people on the school committee know this. We have programs like Course and SAF Scituate Education Foundation, and they are so generous to us. And we have an opportunity to have these programs come to us. The picture to the left is the South Shore Science Center, I believe. This was a great event. That was an outdoor event. All of our students were able to be a part of this multi-sensory program where they got to explore pond life. They got to, it was a touching opportunity where they felt pelts and they got to hear sounds of nature, smells of nature. It was a great hands-on learning experience. We have had the aquarium come and present tide pools before. We have had programs such as yoga and music therapy. And this picture to the right there again is that small gym. That is the wonderful Mr. Jamil Adams. This year that took place, that might have just been just a week or two ago, right? Which was This Is Our House event, which was normally an outside activity, but it was raining that day. So we took it indoors and we learned about, love, inclusion, and trust, lit. And we are definitely all about that at the ECC. ECC is definitely LIT. So that was just a great event that we have. We just love all of our special days. Thanks, Jess. And we thought we would end our presentation with a little bit of a snippet of a singing circle. And this is a great fun time. And if you look closely, you'll see all of the good things going on that Jess talked about. Our wonderful teacher, Erin Colbert, is running a circle here. It's a lot of fun to watch. I hope you like it. So I hope you like that. You know, I think a lot of student engagement there, motor imitation, concepts, fast and slow, and high and low, and all that good stuff. So that's our presentation. I don't know if you have any questions for us, but that's it.
Yeah, and thank you for coming tonight. I thought that was a great presentation because I don't think we've seen the ECC in a while. So to, you know, kind of revisit that was great. The only question I had for you was, I know in the beginning you mentioned that there were 5 or 6 spots for kids on IEPs. Are we typically seeing, like, how many kids do we typically see apply for the ECC on a yearly basis? And, you know, do we have to turn kids away, or is it, you know, we're able to slot everyone who tries to come in?
That's a really great question. I'll try to answer that for you. So we get a lot of applications, and we typically end up at the end of the school year, after we've kind of set our classrooms and we've done that, we end up with a wait list. So we do generally have a wait list of students that, if we had more classrooms, would want to join. We definitely do. We get, because I'm trying to think, we have one full day classroom that's all day, and that has up to 15 or 16 spaces. And then there are 2 other classrooms that are AM, PM. So you have 15 or 16 in the morning, 15, 16 in the afternoon. So there's those 2 AM, PMs, the 1 full day, and then we have the ELC, which is the sub separate. So we definitely get more applications than we have spots each year. That's been pretty consistent, at least in the past few years that I've been in this role. We consistently have had a wait list.
Okay.
I have kind of a follow-up question to that, Mike, if you're all set.
Yep, no, I'm good.
So Lisa, you mentioned that you have like 5 or 6 kids on IEPs and like 10 like typical. Is there like a magic number where you can best, you know, the kids get the maximum benefit of the program?
You mean in terms of how many? I mean, we have to follow guidelines with how many. We have to have a split according to DESE, and we have to stay within that split so that it's still considered an integrated kind of inclusion setting. And I think, if I'm correct, Michelle Bobert, if she's on here, she can correct me. I believe it's basically they want it 60-40. And so then you just have to think about classroom size and ratio of student to teacher ratio. But that's basically, we follow DESE guidelines in order to keep it an integrated inclusion setting.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I didn't realize that.
If I can just add to that, it's Michelle Bobert. It's if you have 15 students, you need to have up to 7 with disabilities and at least 8 without disabilities. If you have 20 students, you can have 5 with disabilities and 15 without. So you always have to have at least one more that is a peer role model, because students often learn best with their typical peers.
Mm.
Absolutely. We've said that for years. The kids learn so much. I think all of the staff that we have here are amazing, and they're truly I work with some of the best people. I swear they're the best. But the kids learn from each other, which is like amazing at this age. And I still feel like I can learn every day. I feel like I get reminded of the important things in the world from the preschool. And I think that's what makes it so magical, is this is where you learn to take turns and share and be kind and learn empathy. And it's like, they got it right at that age. You know, those 3-year-olds definitely get it right. And it's what makes it such a magical place. And anytime anyone wants to come and visit, just let us know, because it's every day these kids come in, and I know my teachers will all agree, it's like it's Disney World here. We're so lucky. Like, never will you see kids happier to be running to school. It's literally like they're coming to Disney World every day with us. And that's what just makes it so fun. You can never not smile and have your cheeks hurt throughout a day here. And we're so happy to have everyone back in the building this year. Like, it's amazing.
And how are those kids doing with having to wear the mask and, you know, potentially having to separate or have that distancing from time to time? Are they doing a good job with that, or is it a constant struggle?
I would say that most of our students are really great about it. In the integrated classrooms, they're all wearing it. We definitely offer mask breaks as needed throughout the day, especially for water and things. The great part is that we can use our outdoor space, so the playground, to really offer that a little bit longer. Some of our students in the substantially separate program are still working on mask wearing, even if they have exemptions. We are still working on exposure. Some students are just tolerating and wearing around their neck. Some students are wearing it for, an extended period of time. So they have a timer and then they'll be able to take it off. And we're working up to wearing it full day. But I would think overall, the ECC is doing much better than anticipated with these 3 to 5 year olds.
That's great to hear. Any other questions from the committee? All right. Well, as I said before, thank you all for coming in and sharing that presentation. That was great to see. So thank you.
For having us.
Great job at what you're doing.
Thank you.
So moving on in the agenda, the next item is our student advisor report. I believe Ms. Reese is on.
Hi, yeah, how are you? I'm happy to be back and report all of our high school stuff. Okay, starting off, honestly, being back in school has been great for everyone. The environment in the classrooms and in the hallways is really high, and everyone is honestly really excited to be back. Even in the first couple weeks, students have been saying how much better this year is than last year, I mean. And honestly, it feels so good to be back and with everyone, especially for like personally my senior year. I know that's like the narrative among the senior class, but within everyone, it's really great. At the beginning of the few weeks, we had an engaging assembly / pep rally with Mr. Adams, the same This Is Our House assembly that the ECC described. It was a lot of fun, and he again went over the principles of love, inclusion, and trust through the This Is Our House theme, and I do think that that's going to be upheld well this year, especially just because of how much happier everyone is being in school than at home. A few weeks ago, Environmental Club sent out flowers to the teachers and staff members to demonstrate how easy it is to reuse and recycle materials, because the flowers and vases had been previously used elsewhere. Yeah, and it was just so grateful. It was to show the gratitude for hardworking teachers at SPS. Clubs and other meetings are back in person and running smoothly, which personally, as someone who's avidly in clubs, that's great. And it feels so good to be engaged again this year. This past weekend, students took SATs for the first time, or I'm sorry, not for the first time, for the first time this like academic calendar, and the practice SATs are coming up on the 16th. The high school student governments and student council are planning our first homecoming week of events in a pretty long time, not ever, but in a pretty long time, led by our senior class's student government, which is my student government, and I'm really, really excited about that. There's going to be a spirit week full of like dress up days and fun stuff, home games for every single sport, not just football, with a Superfan challenge across grades to try to boost attendance for everyone to come to those games, a club carnival on the 15th, which is open to all of the families at Scituate K through 12, and the final football game on Friday night, and then a first homecoming dance for SHS students. I'm really excited, and all the students I know are really excited. Everyone's talking about it. I think it's going to be really great, which I'm super excited about. Sports are off to a great start, which is like not a surprise this year. Golf has had 5 matches and they're 3-1 in the league right now. Football has won their game against Pembroke last week, 34-0, which is great. And they advanced their stats to 3-1-1. The boys soccer team is 5-2-1 and the girls soccer team is 5-5. And the volleyball team has turned things around with their last 2 matches being wins, which is great. We're hoping they'll keep the momentum. The cross-country team has lost their last few meets, but they've been really close, and they're on the road again soon. And field hockey is strong with a 5-2-3 record. And that's what's going on. That's all.
Great. Thank you for that report. And I'm glad you're, back and being able to attend our meetings. It's also been great seeing the students out at different events, and at the football games, there's always a large number of students out cheering on their team. So being able to get back to that somewhat sense of normalcy has been great to see, across the town.
Yeah, it's great. It really is.
Are there any questions for Celia from the rest of the committee? All right. Well, thank you for coming tonight. That detailed report. I look forward to keep hearing from you. So next up on the agenda under the leadership reports is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Burkhead.
Thank you, Chairman Long, and good evening, everyone. Celia, great job. And it's so wonderful to hear that kids are happy to be back. I know the adults are. I know I am personally. And it can't be understated how important that is. I think one thing we learned from the pandemic is that our emotions and our social emotional well-being is critical, and being happy and excited about school and to be back is really important. And so let's keep that momentum going. I guess that will tie nicely into my CLR shout out for this week. I'd like to start with that. We've been talking about one of our goals is personal and academic excellence, and reading is obviously a big part of that. And Mr. Smith's fourth grade class down at Cushing does reading every day as a cornerstone of their work, and invited me to be a guest speaker last Friday. And so I want to give them a shout out and thank them for inviting me to reading from one of my favorite books and movies, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So we went outside on a beautiful day. I even dressed up as Willy Wonka, and haven't done that in a while. So it gave me a good excuse to do that. So thank you, kids. I thoroughly enjoyed reading to you, but also learning a little bit about you and answering any of your questions. So thank you. It was a great way to spend my day. And I want to thank all the staff out there that have been taking me up on my request to invite me into the classrooms. It's been wonderful, and I've been very busy doing so, and look forward to reporting out each and every visit. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about a new opportunity this year. I think somebody mentioned it. The ECC report was outstanding. I want to thank our staff for that presentation. It reminded me of an important point of being in person and being together. Kind of our theme this year, and our ultimate goal is to keep our students full-time, 5 days a week, in person all year long. So that being said, in pillar one of our focus this year, and part of my personal superintendent goal, is to work with our staff in creating a unifying climate and culture. And that's based on building trusting relationships that we've heard some good examples of just already this evening, in that home away from home and love, inclusion, and trust connections that we're making. So part of building these relationships is providing opportunities for people to be heard. We talk about voice, students, staff, community members, faculty, and especially in person. I found that my meetings this year in person have been wonderful, but also I've found that opportunities are created when you have the hybrid version of Zoom. There's a potential. So what I'd like to do this year is start something I'm calling Seaside Chats. I thought that would be appropriate for a Scituate community with all the beautiful water and views we have with the superintendent. So these are going to happen throughout the school year with a variety of topics. And the first two will be held on October 14th. So pretty soon, a couple weeks. And the topic of this first one is going to be on our new building project for the Hatherley Elementary School, the Mass School Building Authority project that we're working on. That's been, will be going before town meeting on October 26th. I think it's very important for folks to hear from me what the project entails, to answer any questions, as best I can, and to hear any concerns. We're very early in the project. It takes multiple years, as some people know and some don't. But that's a simple piece of information I'm willing to share and be as transparent as we can. Sometimes this process doesn't take effect until you start laying out what the building looks like and things like that. But I think the earlier the better, especially where I'm a relatively new superintendent. It will give me the opportunity to get to meet people and to listen about what they have to say about this particular project and to get their input. So other Seaside chats during the year will include a listening tour that was unable to do in person last year. And these will be a lot of open forums where I'll just set up times and places to meet with our community. And that means students, staff, school committee members, parents, and community members. Anyone in the town of Scituate is welcome. We'll also be sending out, and those open forums will be just for me to listen, again, answer questions, take good notes, and look for trends that are building up within our community. And act on the promise that we're going to be listening to people's voice this year and giving people opportunities to speak up about what they believe in a best school district in the world looks like. And you know, as Mr. Gates asked me that question last week, or last school committee meeting, it was important to me that we all define what that is. So that'll be a part of that as we want. So those will be publicized. We'll send those out in Thursday Thoughts. We'll send those out to the community. I mentioned it on the morning cable show this morning. So the times will be 1 p.m. on the 14th and 6 p.m. There'll be 2 times. So if the afternoon is more convenient, that's one opportunity. And later that evening at 6 p.m. At the new senior center. So I'm looking forward to that very much. And finally, I thought I'd share some more good work happening in our schools, tying back into that commitment of keeping kids back in school full-time every day, all year. And what I found in my work with the MAC Medical Advisory Committee and Nurse Leader Roach and our nurses is that there's a really good work happening in our schools with our nurses in coordination with Nurse Leader Roach. So I asked her to come out, and typically what we've been doing is we've been reactive with COVID. We've been reporting on things that are mandated or directed or guided towards us. So we thought today would be a little more proactive and kind of reach out and share with you via Ms. Roach, our nurse leader, some of the things that are happening and some of the work that's happening in our schools to keep our children safe and in school. So I want to thank Kelly and our school nurses for all their hard work. And I'm going to turn it over to Nurse Leader Roach right now, if she can provide a quick summary.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm here to share some good news around COVID-19 that's happening in our schools this year. And I know we don't usually use good news and COVID-19 in the same sentence, but I'm going to tonight. And hopefully by the end of what we talk about, you'll understand why. And so what I specifically want to talk about tonight is what happens with close contacts in school this year compared to what happened last year. And in order to do that, we're going to kind of take a step back and talk about last year for a minute and provide a scenario on what it would look like when a student or a staff member was identified as a close contact in school. And so I'm going to ask you to kind of play along here with me for a minute and pretend that the 5 of you school committee members and myself are all classmates and colleagues. And last year we are in school for a day. We have our day, we see our friends, we have great classes, and we all go home. And later that afternoon, Kelly may have some symptoms. I may develop a fever or a headache, and my family looks at the checklist that the nurses have sent home for symptoms and realize, oh, Kelly needs to be tested. So my family would take me to have a COVID test. And if I unfortunately became positive, that family would call the school nurse, and that school nurse would be the first point of contact to be made aware that there has been somebody in school that tested positive. And so what we know about contact tracing is that this is a task that is assigned to the Board of Health in our towns. But what we also know is the time it takes for that positive test to get sent through the school system, to the state system, to the Board of Health, and then back out to the town where that student lives could be between 1 and 4 days, and that's too much time. We know that that's precious time that we need and can use to identify close contacts to prevent further spread in our schools. And so your nurses have become contact tracers, and they've done that since day one because we know that's important, and because we know that that's the time that action needs to happen so that we can prevent further spread and keep our kids safe. So back to our scenario. Your school nurse gets notified. You're all identified as close contacts. The school nurse may be calling you from home on a Tuesday afternoon at 5 o'clock from her cell phone. Don't save that cell phone number, please delete it. But that person, that school nurse would call you and say, I'm sorry, your student was a close contact. And because of that, the protocol is you need to keep your child home, and you would all stay home for a minimum of 8 days. You would need to test on day 5. And provided you had no symptoms, you could come back to school on day 8. And that would be 8 days of school that you would all be home from school. So we're going to kind of flash forward to this year to an offering that the state has put forth as optional for districts to participate in with regards to this type of situation with close contacts. And so we're going to take that same situation and we're going to talk about what that test and stay program is. So we went through our school day. Again, I test positive, you're notified, but that phone call looks a little different this year. And so that phone call to parents is that, I'm sorry, your student has been identified as a close contact, and we'd like to offer you something called the test and stay program. And what that looks like is that students that have been identified in a school setting as a close contact are given the option to test and stay. So provided your families are checking you every morning with that symptom checker and that you're feeling well and have no symptoms, you come into school, you come off the bus or get dropped off, you come right into the school nurse's office or whatever designated space is, and you get tested by the school nurse before you go to class. And provided you're negative, you can go about your day and continue the mitigation factors that we're all doing, masking and distancing and so forth. And that has been something that, like I said, is optional. A lot of districts in our area are not taking advantage of this because it is additional work. But we're Scituate and we're Scituate nurses, and we know that this is what is best for our kids. And so just to give you a real life scenario that has happened this year, we may get that phone call at 1:30 in the afternoon that there has been somebody positive in our schools. And that school nurse knows that there may be close contacts in school that needs to get on a bus in an hour and a half to go home. And we know what the best thing to do is to identify those students and be able to test them, so we have peace of mind to know that we are sending kids home safely that day on transportation. And so collaboration with principals and teachers, which has been awesome, and families, teachers and principals providing us with seating charts. We're able to identify students, we're able to test them, we're able to offer them this program and describe the program in case they haven't read about it yet or haven't consented yet. And those students participate in a 7-day period of testing. So 7 days from your last point of contact to Kelly, if Kelly was the positive one, you would be tested every morning. And that has been running in our schools since day one. Since the beginning of the year, we've had 15 cases. Your school nurses have contact traced 12 of them. Out of those 12 cases, 84 close contacts have been identified. Out of those 84, 37 of them have been eligible to participate, and 37 families have consented to do this. And it's been really great. The kids are amazing. They are so awesome about coming in and being tested and doing what they need to do. And families have been really appreciative and supportive. In the first 19 days of school, your school nurses have run 280 Binax Now COVID-19 tests. And that's the test that we use. That's a rapid 15-minute results that we know. And that's not just in test and stay. That's for kids that may be symptomatic during the day or what have you. Your school nurses have contacted or advised or provided guidance to over 300 families in town, as well as staff members around COVID-19 scenarios. And that's not saying that we've had 300 scenarios in our schools, but we may get a phone call from a parent that says, I'm home and I just tested positive, but my child goes to your school and they're supposed to come to school tomorrow. What do I do? Or a staff member that may call a school nurse and say, my husband just tested positive. I'm supposed to come to work tomorrow. What do I do? And our school nurses are able to provide them with the most current, accurate, and safest guidance so that we can advise them and keep our community safe. Our school nurses are working so hard, and they are so committed to keeping our kids safe and to keeping them in school where they want to be and where we want them to be. And just a little background information, if I can give them all a shout out. In the first 19 days of school, your school nurses have seen over 300 office visits. 3,000 office visits across our district. I'm going to say that one more time. The first 19 days of school, your school nurses have seen over 3,000 office visits. in addition to all of the amazing work that they're doing with COVID. And it's because of a collaboration with teachers, with parents, with administration, and with the nurses, with the Board of Health, with our epidemiologists. This is a program and a tool that we are happy to take on. It is extra work, but it is the right thing to do. And we are Scituate, and this is what we do for our kids. And I'm thrilled that this has been able to be a tool for us to use. So hopefully you can see why right now I'm using good news and COVID-19 in the same sentence. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you to our nurses. Again, very well said, and I appreciate how you broke it down into layman's terms for all of us to easily understand a very complex protocol and one we're fortunate to take on. And again, we couldn't do it with nurses that punch the clocks. Some of our nurses are doing this in the evening, at night, and it's above and beyond. So I really, but the goal has been to keep our kids in school. So thank you, Kelly, and a shout out to all our nurses. And that concludes my report. So I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman Long, if anyone has any questions for myself and or Mr. Roach.
Yeah, and before I open up for questions, Ms. Roach, you hit it right on. I don't think we can underscore enough how much work is being done to keep our schools open and keep our kids safe, and just the amount of work that our nurses and our teachers have taken on top of just their daily job, and being able to come through and keep our kids in school and give them the options to either test in the school or do something else. And I mean, the backbone of what you're doing cannot be stated enough. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, as well as the nurses that you work with. Sorry, so now I'll open it up to any questions from the rest of the committee.
I have a couple of questions for Kelly. Yeah, and thank you so much for all the hard, this year and a half, almost 2 years has been so trying for you, but thank you for everything that you've helped us out with getting kids back in school. With the test and stay, does it matter if students and staff are vaccinated or unvaccinated?
Yes, it does. And the state has specific guidance as far as who can participate in that program. And so according to the state guidance, we are contact tracing and testing and staying folks that are not vaccinated and that have been exposed in the school setting. So again, these are kids or students, our staff that's identified in the school setting. So if somebody is exposed outside of school at their cousin's house on a weekend, they're not coming in to be participating in the test and stay program. These are unvaccinated individuals that have been exposed in the school setting.
So we're not, somebody who's vaccinated and is a close contact, we're not testing them?
Correct. And that's at the state's, that's the guidance for the state. That's not an us thing. And I have tried, believe me, as much as I don't want to make that list longer. I think it's honestly, I disagree with that protocol. And I call pretty much every day and voice that opinion. And I hope that changes. But we do connect with those families. Mm-hmm. They're not just left out in the cold to say, no one's letting me know what's happening. So families do have opportunities to test outside of school. We're just not allowed to do it in school.
So if all this information, I'm guessing, goes back to the state.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, the people that are vaccinated, if they are close contact, and even if we're not testing them, if they are tested and come back positive, that information will go to the state as well.
Correct.
Okay. And are the supplies for the Binax now, is that through the state?
It is. Yes.
So I can't understand why any other communities wouldn't take part in this.
It's because it's a lot of work. And it's a lot in addition, but like I said, it's the right thing to do. And if it's a tool that we can use to keep our kids in school and to catch things early to prevent spread, it's what we do. And it's what we're going to continue to do. And we'll continue to advocate to include everybody that we think should be tested. And until that happens, spreading the word to families. And asking the state, when this program was rolled out, it was, hey, we're going to provide you with these free tests, and we'll also provide you with staff, which we know that hasn't happened yet, but our school nurses don't want to wait for that. It's too important.
And so if we weren't doing this, and the students that had to be tested, would they just be quarantining at home?
Correct. So 37 students in the first 19 days of school would be home for 8 days each. And because we have this program, they have been in school with us where they need to be and where they want to be and where we want them.
Mhm. Wow. Well, thank you again for taking part in this.
Our nurses are rock stars and they are working so
They
hard, and
are.
I can't thank them enough, as well as everybody else that has a part in this, because it takes all of us. So thank you.
Thanks.
Just have a quick question. Kelly, thanks very much. I echo Mike and Janice's comments. Thank you to you and all the nurses. Just a quick question. I probably should know this, but so what is the protocol if you are vaccinated and you are a close contact? You just come to school, and as long as you have no symptoms, and you don't get tested, and you just remain in class.
That's correct. However, in the nurses' work of contact tracing, if we realize that there has been a close contact that is vaccinated, those families are also getting notified so that they're at least aware that they have been identified as a close contact. And although the state doesn't feel that they need to be tested, we are, offering information and guidance to families so that they're aware that they can get tested on their own. And we're asking, obviously, families to continue, vaccinated or not, to monitor everybody for symptoms before they send their kids to school. And
Right.
Families have been awesome.
Right. And maybe I missed this in your comments, but if you have a student in school who has symptoms, you're testing them regardless of the vaccination status.
That's correct.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Nurse Roach or Superintendent Burkhead? Great. Well, thank you both. All right. And next on the agenda is Ms. Driscoll with the Assistant Superintendent's Report.
Hi, thank you so much. So today, what I'm going to be sharing with you are some big picture overviews about MCAS 2021. So it's really fitting. I didn't realize it would work out like this, but it's very fitting that my presentation is directly after Ms. Roach's. Because this year, before I even share my first slide, I want to make sure it's very clear that when we look at this, this is not a typical year. It was not a typical test administration. We did not have solid instructional models for the year across the state. So when you start things over, sometimes you call it a baseline year. And that's the first year where you're looking at new data. As I was diving into this and talking to department chairs and really understanding what things look like, my personal view right now is that this is a pandemic baseline year. We have nothing to compare this to, where schools were shut down and instruction is in person and remote and in person and remote. And I want to make sure we keep that in mind because where we are in Scituate, this is a snapshot in time. And it's really important that this year, we let teachers teach, we let them connect with kids, get them back into learning so we can really see where we are as we move forward in the future. So is it okay if I share my screen? Thank you. Okay, you should see MCAS 2021. Do we see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the first thing that I want to share with you is that if you want detailed information grade by grade, you always can see our school and district profile. And I made a shortcut, the link, so you could link to it there if you want to see it anytime. So I'm just going to click on that quickly. Did this change to charts for you? Do you see MCAS charts? Okay, great. So you'll see on the assessment tab for 2021, this is an interactive graph that the state provides. If you click onto any grade level, you will see how many students exceed expectations, meet expectations, partially meet expectations, or are not yet meeting expectations in comparison to the state average. And that is broken down in each area. Now, if you notice, the first group, meeting or exceeding expectations, is a combination. And that's typically where we want all students to be, so they combine that. So when you look at the chart itself, it's a little heavy to read. Something else I want to point out in this chart right here, if you look grade by grade, we have around 200 students, in some cases fewer, that we're looking at for each of these percentages. So in such a strange year, that means as few as 20 students shifting to one area or another makes pretty large percentage differences. And this last column is the average scaled score. So that means every single student scaled score, what's the average for Scituate? A 500 on MCAS 2.0 is meeting expectations. Across the state, I'll show you in a minute, across the state, average scores are not meeting expectations. Scituate, for the most part, we are. So the first thing I want to show you is something that people have been asking me about. So anything in this presentation that I'm sharing is because either a parent or a staff member or the general information and feedback that I'm getting is that people want to know about these things. So the first thing that we need to know is that when you receive your parent reports, please make sure we're not using this alone, especially this year. So when you really want to know about a child's achievement, it should be used alongside classroom work, district assessments, school tests, things like that. And if you want to know about your child's achievement, the teacher is the best place to go. The teacher, the counselor, the principal, those are people who work with the children every single day to make sure that we're moving kids forward. A single snapshot does not give a full picture. And there are some things, even though 10th grade MCAS was given the same way it has been in the past, 3 through 8 is very, very different. And this is not something that has happened before. So I want to make sure we understand what these little symbols are on the parent reports. The first thing is the amount of time for testing was reduced to help schools who had different schedules last spring. So instead of 2 sessions, a session 1 and a session 2 happening on 2 separate days, the 3 through 8 tests were 1 session. Now that's one aspect of it. So it's a shorter, a smaller sample, if you will. But the second thing that we really need to look at is that students took half of the test in each subject. So some students, let's say there's 200 students in a certain grade, some took the first half of the test, others took the second half of the test. And those 2 halves are what's giving us our district results. So why this matters is because in certain grades, if I'm taking an ELA test, I may have had to write an essay and another student in the same grade may not have. In other grades, I may have had the calculator session of the MCAS test, while someone else did not have the calculator session of the test. Certain sessions also have more test questions as like sample questions. So this is something that looks different. Even with my own children, they noticed that during the test, how some tests were longer than others, because in this case, students did not all take the same test. So that is a very big change. The other piece that only happened 3 through 8 is students who were learning remotely could take the tests on a computer at home. Now, at the beginning of this last year, I'm sure you heard that maybe they were going to break out the data separately for the remote students, and that's not how we received our data. We have everybody's all together. So those are some things that are wildly different for MCAS 2021. So this is a sample of what this is state's sample that they gave us to explain the parent report. So this is something that every single student who took MCAS last year will be getting. You'll see the bar, the red is not meeting expectations, the yellow is partially, the green is meeting, and the blue is exceeding. What you'll notice near that 510 and the green arrow is that there's a dotted line across that 510. So what that's communicating to you is that that is the range that your child would likely receive if they took the test multiple times. So this year, that range is substantially wider than it is in a typical school year. The same thing is true for student growth percentiles. You see the bar across it. The range is substantially wider. But you'll see your child's score where they were in 2019, in 2021, or if they did test in 2019. And you'll see the school, the district, and the state average for the scaled score. Does anybody have any questions before I move to other charts, or do you want me to take them at the end? All right, I assume.
I think you can keep going.
All right, thank you. All right, so this is district achievement compared to the state percentage of meets expectations and exceeds expectations. So something that I really made sure that as soon as this data came out, it was urgent to see where are we in comparison to the state when it comes to students who are where they need to be. In every group, and I grouped grades 3 through 8, in every group, we are substantially higher than the state average for meets and exceeds. Now, that doesn't mean that's where we want to be, but this is where we are. So when I show the gaps on the next slide, which is also important to look at, we need to make sure that we're keeping in mind that, for example, grade 10 ELA with 82% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations is substantially higher than most districts. In science, the 64% compared to 42, substantially higher. So when we're looking at these changes from 2019 to 2021, I don't believe these changes are necessarily permanent. So this is a slide with the state's achievement, and I'm calling this state pandemic impact. So if you look at the blue, the green, the orange, and the red, this is achievement levels for ELA. Now the blue line is where the meets and exceeds, the green bar, was in 2019. So you remember all those Boston Globe articles? There's a dip in every grade, the second the data was released, those all came out. This is the gap between the green and that blue line are the gaps or the loss in in meets expectations or exceeds across the state. The one thing that is very interesting to know, if you look at 10th grade English all the way to the right for the entire state, the literacy levels here, or the meets and exceeds, actually increased in grade 10. So I assume, again, pandemic year, that we are seeing some of those increases in 10th grade in literacy because of the dependence and reliance on reading that we needed to be able to access our content areas all day long when we had remote learning. So the next slide is Scituate compared to the state. So on the left side, it's the state's decrease from 2019 to 2021, and on the right side is Scituate's. And you'll see that for each grade level. But the place I put stars over here, because the place where we have enough students, I feel like to look at the best change is here on all grades 3 through 8 for ELA. And we're right in line with the state for that average. And if you look at grade 10, the state went up 3%, Scituate actually went up 7%. And there's another grade level I'd like to call out. If you look at grade 6 ELA, our chart would not match the state chart. Our green bar would go significantly below that blue bar, because in 6th grade, the scores did go up in a different trend, in a different pathway, which is amazing. So overall, 3 through 8 and 10 are the best places to look. And now let's look at math. Again, here's the state pandemic impact. And if you notice, the gaps in math are substantially larger across the board. And in Scituate, overall, if we are in line with the state, except if you look at our 3 through 8, the state went down 15%, we went down 9%. And in English, it's about 2% difference for grade 10. Excuse me, in math, it's about 2% difference for grade 10. So the next steps, what we are doing, and I'd like to give a shout out to Patrick Newton, Liz Grindle, Megan Gregory, John Scopoletti, who are already working with departments to target what things are a pattern from previous and where teachers need to focus. We're going to continue to monitor progress through classwork, projects, tests, grade level assessments. Our focus as a district, I think as you heard of today, is on positive engagement. And later on, you're going to hear from Principal Long about our acceleration academies. We're hoping that we can establish some acceleration academies that will focus on transferable math and literacy skills to enhance school day instruction and seek innovative practice. So what you might hear in other places, if you are not making pace with math or with reading, or if you want to accelerate it, a traditional, I guess, in the box kind of plan is, if they need more math, give them more math, cut something else out. That is really not where we need to be. Give kids triple, double math. That's not where we are. We need to focus on making sure that kids are understanding why these skills are important. We need to have them engaged and happy and feel comfortable in our schools every day, attending class to get back to the regular practice of instruction. And we're hoping that these acceleration academies will allow us to really think outside of the box and re-engage or accelerate all learners in a way that we really haven't been able to do before. So I'm gonna, there is one other thing I'd like to share before I'm done, is on our website, there is a community feedback link, and you might have seen that in our Thursday Thoughts. We would love for as many people as possible to click our community feedback link. In there, we have 2 surveys. One survey is about how we might use our ESSER 3 grant. We want to hear everybody's voice, so please feel free to click that and share your thoughts. And then the other link is some information that we need for our Curriculum Acceleration Committee. It's a family survey. We need to hear people's voices of what you want us as a district prioritize. We really need to hear and learn this year to find out, I guess, where everybody is in order to decide where we need to go. And I can entertain questions or comments.
Great. I'll open up to the committee. Any questions for the Assistant Superintendent?
Hey, Mike, I have one right now. Heidi, thanks so much for doing that. I think that your explanation of the difference in the overall state and the decrease in the, I guess, the learning levels and how we compare, I think that's very helpful. So I appreciate that analysis. I have to look a little bit closer to truly understand it, but I think I do. And this is probably getting too granular, but do you know if we have the ability to look at the MCAS scores of the remote students versus the hybrid students? And I'm not sure if that would impact anything, but it would be interesting to look at that if possible.
So it is on the parent reports. I have not pulled that out personally because I'm not interested in teaching hybrid. I want to get back to in-person learning. So we haven't pulled that out. It's something I could spend some time on if you'd like.
No, I don't think, I was just curious if potentially, whatever, one group or the other, the scores were there was some sort of theme. For example, the remote students performed not as well as the hybrid students. I don't know if that proves anything, but I don't know if our remote numbers were substantial enough to do anything, but I just thought that would be interesting.
So I understand what you're saying. So I actually thought you meant something different. So what we have is whether they took the test remotely or if they took the test in person. I don't have their learning models lined up because for many kids that changed over the year. So I want to be a full remote student and then they would come back certain times. So Yeah, that isn't easily accessible, but if we decide that's something that would impact future student achievement and learning, I'm more than happy to look at it.
No, no, it's okay. Again, I don't think our remote numbers were substantial enough to really change the statistics dramatically or one way or the other, but if it was readily available, it would be interesting. But as you said, kids may have started remotely and then came in hybrid or vice versa. So,
and the state didn't share the statewide data on those statistics. So I feel like we want to make sure this is a year where there's a lot of variables into the quality of the information we got on these exams for sure.
and to thank you again, I think it's also helpful that all the results are all available on the DESE website. And as you said, they're interactive. You can click around and find anything you want. So I think it's helpful for folks that are on this or are attending this meeting to realize that they can go access those. And as you said, the parent report should be coming home in the next couple of weeks.
They should be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody have further questions or?
I do, but I saw Janice unmute, so I was waiting. Let you go, Janice.
Go ahead, Carrie. I've asked a lot of questions tonight.
No, it's fine.
I do have questions, but I'll
yeah,
wait.
no worries. So Heidi, thank you for that presentation. And I know you and your team are working to collect more data, as you pointed out, the need for other data sources. So I appreciate that. I guess I'm wondering, at the beginning of your presentation, you established that this data is complicated, right? It's remote students in there taking the test remotely, the sort of notion of that half and half piece, right? And so I guess I'm just wondering, can you help us as a community sort of think about what should we be paying attention to? Like, what are the takeaways from this baseline data? And then the other thing I would ask as a follow-up, and this is where, as you were talking, I was thinking about data on economic growth, which is actually related to this, I think. And what I guess I'm wondering is, as you and Superintendent Burkhead think about this year, what are examples of maybe leading or lagging indicators of student success? Not just the MCAS scores, but like what should we be looking for or looking at as parents and community members to say, oh, our students are, improving, as we move through the year, or, ooh, we're still not there. So can you give us like, what are the takeaways from this data, and what should the community, parents, caregivers be paying attention to as we move through the year?
Well, I think the big takeaway is that this data should not be alarming. It is a snapshot in time. So I think that a lot of people were very worried. You heard in the newspapers, learning loss, and people were panicked about the effect. But the truth is that we need to let teachers teach. We need to bring kids back. So the takeaway is, please look at what your students are bringing home. Look at their work, communicate with the teacher. Please do not let one assessment define your success or your failure, or please don't let this one data point where kids took the test in all sort of different ways define your child's achievement, please. Now, in the future, though, what I do think we should look for, and if any of you really like to look at data, you want to scroll back to 2019, what we should look at in the future are the percentile rankings. So the percentile rankings are something that does not exist for this year because the state said, look, we are not ranking, we're not comparing, we're not using this data for that because this is unprecedented. But a percentile ranking is something that shows where we are in relation to the entire state. So almost like when, I don't know if you remember when you took the Stanford 9 or you took a test and you got the 0 to 99. And if you got the 99, you were the best. That's what we are looking for in the future. Now, not only should we look at percentile rankings for Scituate as a whole, but we should look at our special populations. We should look at all of the breakouts of our data, and the state helps us with that and provides that, or they usually do. Currently, this year, they don't, because they don't want us to use this for ranking purposes because there were so many variables in the timing of this test and the administration of the test itself. And in our students. I have three, I don't know if this is too much oversharing here, but I have three kids, and my three kids now were back at school full time, and one of them took MCAS within 2 weeks of his first 5 days of school. And he's not a student who typically struggles, but that was scary for him. He wasn't ready for that. And I'm dying to get his parent report, but I know whatever it is doesn't define him as a learner. It just happens to be what happened that day. So I think the look fors in the future are percentile rankings, and that's what I will be personally looking at. And there's all sorts of numbers that inform that. And I think the district leadership team needs to make sure that we understand those and break those out so that we're ready for that in the future. But I hope that answered your question. Okay.
I did. I had one more, and I was just curious, and I'm not going to hold you to this. I know you're in sort of process with data. Mr. Gates had mentioned at our previous school meeting around this idea of best, right? Like we have to define what it means to be best. And so I'm curious, what I would really love to see is not just our MCAS data and these other sources, but well-being. Student well-being and happiness and social emotional is a big piece of being the best. And so it'd be great if in the future, when we present data, that we have data on not just the academic, right, achievement of our students, but how do they feel and how are they doing? And so I just wondered if you have thoughts on the kind of data that you're hoping to collect to sort of capture that measure, Heidi.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a presentation, I think last April. I think I don't know if I was just visiting then or if I think I wasn't really, I was here, but not really here. There is a program called PAIR where we actually collect data, social emotional data. It's tracked in a system. Students get screened in for supports, and Greg Ranieri did a wonderful presentation on that. And we're expanding our relationship with PAIR this year because that is urgent. There's also what we need to do as a district is define our portrait of a graduate. That's something that NEASC requires us to do, but it's also something that is good to do, period. And I hope that in the portrait of a graduate, when we discuss what that endpoint looks like for us, then we can decide, okay, what are those static data points that we can look at year to year that really would help kids get where they need to be as graduates and as people.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Heidi, thank you so much for that presentation. And full disclosure, I've been anti MCAS since its inception. So, because I couldn't agree more than with what Carrie said about how a test is you cannot base the success of a student on one like a flashpoint in their academic career. And your explanation of what happened this past year with MCAS and how it was administered, I question as to why they even bothered giving it. Because if you have half the kids taking half of the tests and the other half taking the other half, how does that play into the final, the final score of, the rankings of, how that grade did? And if half the kids are writing a paragraph, where does that put their score on MCAS?
So that's a good question. And that's why there are no rankings this year. The state has aggressively told us, don't you compare kids, don't you compare classrooms. That is not what this data is for. Now, typically, the state will compare and they'll ask us to compare and they will compare us to other districts. And this year they are saying, do not do that and resist the urge. Now, resist the urge to do that. Yeah. And I do want to say long-term, if a test is given with fidelity, even though one kid might have had a bad day, long-term, if a test is given with fidelity, it will give us information about the big picture in achievement and where we need to go, especially if we look at it over time. Something else that something like MCAS does, it allows us to identify achievement gaps. And I'm not sure if we've had conversations about that in this district before or how heavy the conversations have been. But if there is a discrepancy between, let's say, all students in achievement in mathematics and low-income students. If that discrepancy is shown, that has to be addressed in a district. And I think sometimes people are scared of MCAS data because it does bring those to light. And people say, oh, the test isn't fair. But sometimes if you look at the test when it's given with fidelity, it actually helps identify some pretty substantial needs in a district. And I hope that in the future, we'll be able to use MCAS and other data points to be able to support the closing of those gaps in Scituate.
I mean, you mentioned, looking at other things that the students are doing in school. Mm-hmm. And, we just had the expectation. I attended the expectation night at the high school and at Gates. And, I can't even look at MCAS because what the kids are doing, what the teachers have the kids doing is amazing. And it's the energy that the teachers have in every single class I went to. It's amazing. And they're doing amazing things other than MCAS. So I'll just leave it at that.
And I'll just echo what the other members of the board have said. I mean, thank you for putting this together. I think it was a great presentation to show, this is one thing, but at the same time, there's 10 other data points. There's a lot of other things that go into making our students showing their growth year over year. And, I look forward to seeing that come out over the course of the year, over the next couple of years, and the work that you and your team are doing. In the presentation that you showed, is that going to be up on the school website? Can it be?
The slides can be, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Just so that people can access that link and go through and review the data if they choose to.
Absolutely.
But Dr. Workowski actually took half the question that I had, so I'll just say thank you for the presentation.
All right.
Any last questions for the Assistant Superintendent? Well, thank you again. We'll move forward in the agenda to new business, which is the job description for the academic support and enrichment instructor. I'll turn it over to Principal Long.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share. I know you have the job description in your backup files, but I just wanted to give a little bit of context to the job description. So if I can just share my screen. Oops. Everybody see this?
Yes.
All right, so we have what we're going to call it the Scituate Engagement Academy. So C, how appropriate for our Scituate. We are very excited. The committee came together, Dr. McGuire, Mr. Beatty, Liz Grindle, and myself, along with Ms. Crawford, to begin our process of rolling out the Scituate Engagement Academy. The Academy falls under the two pillars that you've heard from Superintendent Burkhead around the culture of collaboration, personalization, where we know our students and we work to their strengths, their challenges, but also that culture of excellence, where we're connecting students, promoting their connectedness to school, their motivation, their engagement, and their all-around well-being and educating the whole child. So we're very excited for this opportunity. Our vision, as you can see, connects to those pillars of collaboration and personalization, as well as the culture of excellence. So in order to personalize, we have our Scituate staff.
Excuse me, Rebecca, we're seeing the 5 slides instead of the next slide.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Sorry. So we have our connectedness to the collaboration and personalization, where we will be posting this position internally for our Scituate staff. And then that culture of excellence piece, where we're providing opportunities for students to engage them across the many aspects that they might be connected to or interested in. We are going to start with a 6-week mini session that hopefully, with the approval of the posting, We'll be able to start at the end of October and go through that first week of December for our program. Our next steps, so the posting, which you have, we will be sending a survey to families to gather feedback around which grade levels. This is going to be available for all schools, grades K through 12. Just what interest, what subject areas we might have interest in. We are going to, within the job posting, the educators will propose course offerings that include the transferable literacy and math skills, as well as opportunities for intervention and acceleration. So if I'm someone applying for the role, I would propose a title and give a little bit of a background to what the 6-week program would look like. We will then have student registration. And then, like I said, we're looking to begin our 6-week pilot at the end of this month through December 6th. We will not have courses the week of Thanksgiving. We're looking for students to commit to attend all the sessions. And then for now, for this mini session, the transportation will be the responsibility of the families. And then this is connected back to our home away from home, where we want students to be engaged positively to their community, their school, and also through the C opportunity to be able to provide experiences where students maybe can go back to their classroom or go back to their peers and share their experiences. So maybe the outcome is they could share their final project maybe with others, or share leadership opportunities, or engage with the community. So we're looking to really make this an opportunity for students to be connected back with their peers and within their own school. And that's all.
Great, thank you for that presentation. Are there any questions from the committee for Principal Long?
Mike, I have just a couple basic ones. Ms. Long, thanks very much for that. Just a couple of things. Do you think this is something that would be, is it going to be every day, and is it after school, and for how long? Or is that to be determined?
Great question. So we are looking to provide opportunities either before or after school, and we may start with 1 day a week at each level. Okay. So the elementary schools maybe will pick 1 day just to get it going, see how it goes with the first pilot. And then we're looking to expand, hopefully when we come back, maybe the end of January, we'll start the next session and kind of go from there. But we're looking to start small and do it right, and then build and grow from there.
Okay. And do you anticipate it? Is this just elementary, or is this going to be all levels?
All levels.
Okay. It sounds great. Thank you. That's the only questions I had.
Sure.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you for that presentation. So I guess I assume that because you presented that it would be based in Jenkins, but it'll be something at all schools.
Sorry, this will be at all elementary schools, one at the middle school, one at the high school. Yes.
And so you're looking for parents to maybe, register their children. Would staff possibly identify kids that might benefit to, not just do this like on a volunteer basis?
They may. That's a great question. So if there are programs, we want students to feel connected and be a part of. So there may be programs where we may encourage and reach out to families for them to be involved with that opportunity.
Great. Thank you.
So Rebecca, I also, as my colleagues have said, I really appreciate this academy. I think it'll do some great work. I'm curious, I kind of just want to know sort of an example of like, what would this look like in practice? Can you give me an example of like, if an elementary school student joined the academy, what might be something they do in this academy? If you could share. I know it's still a pilot, but even just an example.
That's okay. That's a great question. So it could be a program where a group of students are opening a restaurant and they work together to problem solve what they may need, how they may set things up. with problem solving, critical thinking skills, the planning of it. And then maybe at the end, they worked with a local restaurant or business to really engage that opportunity for that project-based learning. So it could be something along those lines. It could be something along the lines of math in the real world and engaging students in real life opportunities with that. And maybe then they share with, I don't know, maybe middle or high school students. Maybe it's an opportunity for high school students to come down and mentor or work with elementary students. So we're really trying to think outside the box. I'm actually really excited to see once we post what our staff will bring. We have wonderful staff that are enthusiastic about these opportunities. So we're excited to be able to see what ideas people have as well. But that's the gist of what we're looking for.
Great. I think sort of related to what Ms. Lindblom was mentioning about staff selecting students. I wonder, have you given, I'm sure you have, so I'm wondering what kind of thought has gone into thinking about access and equity, making sure that all students have an opportunity to engage in this kind of a program?
So we look forward to, I work with Ms. Driscoll and to see what we will have, what students want. And then from that, we will work to provide the equity and equitable opportunities for students to be able to participate and what their needs may be in order to participate, and looking to support students to provide that equity, because we want students to feel connected and be a part of this. So we will work out those logistics, but we have thought about different opportunities that we may need to provide in order to make it so that all students can access this.
Thank you.
Sure.
So can I ask, I just want to make a follow-up comment that I want to thank Carrie for asking what it looks like, because I kind of assumed that it was more like a tutor, because we just talked about academic achievement and where we lag behind. So I was kind of picturing kids who needed like extra help in, certain subjects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you don't, I jump in for a second. So something that is different about this academy, this is not a remediation academy, it's acceleration. And something that came through loud and clear with Scituate parents is that they want their kids challenged. So this academy is not only for remediation, it's hopefully for a kid who maybe is working above grade level or should be working above a grade level and needs to engage in something that motivates them and excites them that they can bring back to school. And Rebecca touched on that. And we're really excited with this job posting, because this isn't a typical job posting. Who wants to do? Hi, people are in here. If this isn't a typical job posting where we're just saying who wants to work, we actually want their ideas. So what do you do and what can you do to inspire students and embed that literacy in math? Because we don't want to give a kid 3 math classes this year. We want them to practice those skills organically and let teachers teach.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see what comes out of those survey results from the parents and even coming from the staff and the ideas that they can present. I think that would be great if we could at least get some kind of update on that in the future, just because, I mean, this could cascade into going from a pilot program in my head, and talking to Superintendent Burkhead about this last week as we built the agenda, how far this could go and really be a benefit for our students is amazing. And I'm glad you brought this to us tonight. So thank you for that. The only question I had, is there a cost to students to join this program, or is it free for anyone to join?
There's no cost, and it is free for anyone to join.
That is a perfect answer, so thank you for that. If there are no other questions from the committee, this is something that we do need to vote, so I will entertain a motion on this job description.
I'll make a motion to approve the academic support and enrichment instructor job description as presented.
I'll second.
We'll do a roll call vote. Long, yes. Lindblom?
Yes.
Gates?
Yes.
and Borkowski.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you for bringing this forward, and we look forward to hearing the feedback on how this goes throughout the year.
Thank you all so much. We're very excited. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So next on the agenda is a discussion on the FY23 budget calendar with Dr. Dutch.
Good evening. I will share my screen if I can. Okay, so I wanted to share with you the FY23 budget calendar. It's hard to believe that we're already starting this conversation, but we've already done one piece of our budget for the town already. So I just want to identify that the budget is one of the three major responsibilities for the school committee, and they have oversight and final say on approving that budget. So I want to go through the process and the roles and responsibilities that people have. Town meeting is the ultimate decision maker on our budget through the process of voting an appropriation to the town. And then we've got to work within that appropriation. The superintendent provides the guidelines for developing those budget requests. He reviews all the projections, the requests of all the departments, and then makes budget recommendations to the school committee. The budget is then developed from input from principals, the assistant superintendent, all the curriculum leaders who gather information from their teachers as well. This is primarily for cost center areas that are non-salary related. So really about 16% of our budget is determined through this process. And then the school committee establishes a budget policy. They identify the priorities with the superintendent. And as you heard, we have the two pillars and goals that the superintendent and the school committee will have in place. And those are kind of the drivers of our budget. We then present a final budget that's been approved by the school committee to the town's advisory committee, the select board, and then ultimately town meeting. So this is the calendar, and I'll go through some of these line items or these items and explain them to you. You'll see that on September 24th, capital requests were due to the finance director for the town. That's already been submitted. Then on November 1st, the FY23 budget forms and the guidelines will be sent to all principals and department heads, and they'll begin that process with their staff to identify the needs based on the guidelines that are provided. We will then, the superintendent, myself, and the assistant superintendent will sit with principals and department heads to have discussion about priorities and what some of those budget guidelines are. And then all requests are due to me by December 3rd, at which time I'll put that budget together, identify a total cost, and then share that with the superintendent. In the meantime, on December 9th, the superintendent will then sit with principals and department heads to review their requests. They'll have an opportunity to advocate and defend the requests that they've made, particularly if they're increases in what they've had and requested in the past. New positions, anything like that will have to be justified. The superintendent will then spend the month of December developing the budget request. Our finance subcommittee will get a preliminary view of the budget request so that they have some idea and can then share that information with the school committee as a whole. We'll then meet in January, superintendent and I, with principals, supervisors, and the assistant superintendent to provide them a budget update let them know where we are in this process and what's been approved, what hasn't been, so that they can begin planning for the next year. We'll then hold a school committee budget workshop, which is on a Saturday. This is an opportunity for the community to get a first pass at the budget as well, but it's primarily intended for the school committee to see everything in the budget. February 17th, we have a public hearing, which is the public's opportunity to have input into our budget, share what they feel is important and may be lacking in the budget. Obviously, there's opportunity prior to that directly through email to the superintendent or myself. And then finally, we will provide a summary of the approved budget to the school committee, by the school committee, excuse me, to the advisory. On the 28th, the school committee will vote to approve the budget. And then finally, we will present to the select board for their review. And then the town meeting is held on April 11th, at which point, hopefully, the budget is approved and voted by town meeting. And July 1st, we begin the process of functioning on our FY23 budget. Just some things to keep in mind as guidelines. There are really two types of requests. Level service, which assumes an increase in the budget automatically just through cost of living increases, both for staff as well as supplies and materials. And then we also look at a program improvement budget, which is where we're looking for justification of things that we're adding to the budget, whether that's staff or materials, software, curriculum guides, anything along those lines would have to be justified and fit within our two pillars, as well as meeting the other mandates that we have that are regulatory. And so these are a list of the things that are required: statutory, regulatory mandates, steps, lanes, longevity, any other collective bargaining increases, increases under other existing contracts, so contracts that we may have with vendors, and then significant inflationary or enrollment increases. If we find that all of a sudden we have a large influx of students in third grade, we may need an additional teacher to maintain student-to-teacher ratios, so those would be in place. And then a program improvement budget, as I mentioned, it's both level service plus additional funds. And again, we look for how much they're looking for, the purpose, the impact. So they've got to demonstrate the value of their request, and then potentially any sources of revenues. We can't assume that the public will pick up the cost in all cases. And obviously, they've got to reflect the district's values and goals, which goes back to the pillars. So some of those regulatory components that I mentioned earlier, we've got to meet the federal requirements to provide a free and appropriate public education. We've got to meet the federal and state accountability system, which Ms. Driscoll spoke about this evening. We have to meet the Title VI and Civil Right, which is the Civil Rights Act, as well as the state's general law, Chapter 71A, for bilingual students, limited English proficiency specifically. We also undergo what we call audits, the work coordinated program reviews. Now they're tiered focus monitoring, but there are recommendations made within those that we must adhere to and try and address. So we've got to make sure that we're funding appropriately based on those requirements. And then Section 504 and the ADA requirements. And then finally, Educator Reform Act and the Educator Evaluation has requirements around professional development. So we've got to make sure that we're meeting those needs. Within the Education Reform Act, there are requirements around funding. We've got to meet a minimum requirement, which Scituate does easily at this point, but we need to keep an eye on that and make sure that we continue to do that. So that is the budget calendar and the document that guides all of that. I'll stop sharing and answer any questions that you may have.
And before I open up to the rest of the committee, so this is not something we need to vote just because, dates could obviously change from one point to another. So this is the guideline that we'll follow, obviously getting feedback from the financial forecast, the finance subcommittee that we have, which I think is me and Mr. Gates. But this is not something that we typically vote in the past or would have to vote tonight. But I will open up to any question.
It doesn't require a vote. That's correct.
Right. But I'll open up to the rest of the committee for any questions that they have for Dr. Dutch.
Well, actually, you kind of answered my question. Since you don't have to vote, I just wanted to ask on that February 17th date. That's a Thursday night. Is that on purpose? Is that because February vacation kind of runs around that?
Yes, it was dictated by February vacation.
Okay. Yeah, it's fine. No, I just want to reiterate, I think that's great, Dr. Dutch, for reviewing that. I just want to reiterate to the committee and to those listening that the biggest driver of our budget really is this financial forecast, which is a joint effort between the town and the school to develop, to see how much funds are available for a school. So that process begins tomorrow.
And Dr. Dutch, I just had one question for you. So I think 3 years ago now, one of the things that we did between the administration and the school committee is we got a list of about, I think it was like 40 or 50 items that were being added to the budget for whatever reason. The administration had gone and ranked them based on what they thought the priority was. The school committee, the 5 members of the school committee had also ranked it. We kind of compared that as part of the budget workshop. And as we went through and defined the budget and what was in and out, it was interesting because I think we were widely different in a couple of spots. We're pretty close in others. But I don't know if that's something that we can potentially look at doing again this year, just to, see that full list, but then allow the school committee to weigh in and as a whole, and then try to provide feedback or see why some things are being included in the budget for the coming year versus, maybe not being done or being pushed out a year.
Yeah, we can certainly provide you with a list of those things that are not being included in the budget, and those things that are new to the budget. Part of the requirement for anything new coming into the budget will be having to prioritize, providing a rationale. We'll be asking the principals to prioritize items that are above what they've had in the past. Obviously, the budget is relatively finite. It's a $45 million budget, but 84% of that is salaries. So really there's only about 16% that we have to play with in that $45 million budget. So, if something new is coming in, it's likely that something else is going to have to not be included in the budget, and we need to justify that not being necessary any longer as well. So a long answer to your question: yes, we can provide that information for you with some background information as well. Whether it's the departures are prioritized or not, I won't commit to that, but anything new will be prioritized.
Okay, and that makes sense. And not having the prioritization for that first part does make sense. One of the things that I think we've struggled with as a school committee, and this was before you came in, was just, we didn't always see the things that the principals or the staff might have brought up and said, hey, we want to add this to the budget, and it never got as far as the school committee. So seeing and understanding some of that from the ground level, I think would be at least interesting for us to see. And obviously, we look to the administration to make, at least that leading proposal on whether we keep something in the budget or not. But, seeing that would, I think would help the school committee as we go through the budget process through the coming year.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Seeing no other questions, I'll move forward in the agenda. And the next item is, the Social Educational Collaborative. So each year we need to appoint one person to be our liaison to the Social Educational Collaborative. Fortunately for Superintendent Burkhead, that is typically the superintendent's job, so we appoint him to do more work for the district on our behalf. Superintendent Burkhead, I don't know if there's anything you want to say before we reappoint you to the position.
No, I want to say I loved it. Actually, it allows me to meet other superintendents and certainly the leader of the collaborative to learn more about the collaborative where we send children. The process and to be on that board of directors is an honor, and then come back and share that information with you all. So again, it's a pleasure to do so.
Thank you. In that case, I will entertain a motion on the position.
School committee will entertain a motion to appoint Superintendent Bill Burkhead as their liaison to South Shore Collaborative.
I second.
Okay, so do a roll call vote. Lindblom,
Yes.
Long, yes. Borkowski
Yes.
and Gates.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent Burkhead. The next item on the agenda was the subcommittee liaison appointment vacancies. Ms. Brindolini couldn't be here tonight, so I'm going to move that to the next school committee meeting. I don't think there's anything pressing that we need to try to appoint someone to tonight, but if something comes up over the next week or so, I'll definitely reach out to the committee. So the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's goals. So obviously we saw those in our last meeting. Went through and asked questions of Superintendent Burkhead. Superintendent Burkhead, do you have anything to add before we review, or if there are any other questions from the committee before we potentially vote on those goals?
No, just that I'd be happy to answer any questions or clarify any questions or concerns.
I just really wanted to follow up, Superintendent Burkhead, on the presentation from last week. And I know I was asking questions about the data, and would love if you would be willing to share just for a moment some thoughts that you have around defining some of these important constructs, in terms of personalized learning, collaboration. And I keep going back to Mr. Gates' point around best. And so just, I know this is a work in progress, but if you just could talk just briefly about some of your preliminary plans for that work.
Sure, I think it's a great question. And I'll point out some examples tonight to be specific. And I think Assistant Superintendent Driscoll brought up a good point this evening when she said, a baseline year. Last year across the state, we're in a pandemic, and I think we did a great job as a district and as a school committee to work collaboratively to, do some great things. So what we found this year is that, like the MCAS data, a lot of things that we need to move our district forward are systemic, and some things, first of all, culturally. So one of the big tenets this year is philosophical. We need to create a culture of excellence and personalization and collaboration. Like you said, well, what does that mean? And so some examples of that and what data we would be using is that there's some things that we have to start to establish first. And a through line that I can make, and as an example of this goal, is the acceleration academies. So we've heard that the acceleration academies, and we heard through Rebecca Long tonight, first of all, it gives our leadership an opportunity to lead those innovative programs. It also allows our staff to be included in creating those programs for our students. And finally, it's equitable in its access. It's free. It's available to all students. And what's great about our district is it's happening with not only students that need support in, let's say, math or English, but it's also for acceleration for those that may want, to be challenged and pushed. Free of charge, open to all students. So that through line there is a great example, I think, of personalization and collaboration. I'm having trouble with that word tonight. And another example is the home away from home example that aligned to the two pillars. And I think when the example I can give there is the conversation that we had with our ECC and other programs that you've heard pretty consistently with Mr. Adams going into our schools and doing This Is Our House and establishing that kickoff where everybody's included, everyone's part of something, and everyone is, in the same house together. And I think what we start doing, and another thing that came up, I think, to collect that data is the peer data, for example. We talked about being inclusive, being excited to be in school, and then sharing that peer data. And then one of the other, I think, objectives and indicators we talked about, and one of the goals was to give surveys on our curriculum. And I think that was also shared tonight with Ms. Driscoll, where our curriculum needs to be kind of brought in together, organized and shared with the community, but also an important part of all of the cultures of excellence that we have is voice. And the example of already the surveys are out for family, student, staff input on what our curriculum needs to be and what our innovative new practices need to be in the acceleration academies are two perfect examples of things that we don't currently have, that we will have, that will allow us to collect data. Okay, we ran these programs, and how does that connect to student learning? And those innovative practices that do work, we support them either in our budget, like Dr. Dutch said tonight, and reflect our values, or we include them as part of our best practice in our classrooms. So those are some examples. The other example is communication. My role is to communicate with our community. One of my personal goals on there is to, get this new school to fruition. So these Seaside charts are going to be opportunities for me to go out and listen and learn. And that data will be available as some of my evidence on what the community is saying about not only the new school, but our school in general, and break it down by community members, students, and staff. So a lot of this stuff I know, again, I think tonight's meeting was a great microcosm of some examples of things that are already happening. And we're collecting information with the surveys, with the programming that we're starting, and then sharing that back with you and having some baseline. So next year we can come back and say, okay, we ran X program, or we ran the peer data on our baseline for the first year back after a pandemic. This is what we saw where our students were in need. This is where they were thriving. This is what we're going to do about it. So a lot of things are new that haven't been around. We challenged our staff, and I think they've risen to the occasion already, to get excited about being part of something. So I think everybody in this district, no matter who you are, has an opportunity to contribute to these goals. And so they're not my goals, they're our goals. And I think the surprise of it is that there's going to be a lot of things that I directly don't impact. It'll be the teachers in the classroom, it'll be the paraprofessionals, it'll be, our central office team and principals.
Any other questions for Superintendent Burkhead? If not, I'll entertain a vote on his goals for the 2021-2022 school year.
I'll make a motion to accept Superintendent Burkhead's 2021-2022 superintendent goals.
I second.
Do a roll call vote. Gates?
Yes.
Burkowski?
Yes.
Long, yes. And Lindblom?
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. So next on the agenda is the first and only opportunity for public comment. If people want to raise their hands, I can ask them to unmute and let them make their comment. Kristen Scott. And as I unmute people, if they can just say either their name and address or name and school affiliation.
Hi there, Kristen Scott, 93 Lawson Terrace. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So as a parent, I do need to say that the MCAS results are incredibly alarming. I think I'm probably stating the obvious here, but COVID variables were, they weren't variables that were exclusive to Scituate. Surrounding towns they all suffered the same variables, and many, seriously outscored us, which is where my concern is generated from. So I suppose while COVID learning came with its own host of complicated challenges, MCAS, whether you agree with the concept or not, is still somewhat of a, or not somewhat, but is a relative measuring stick. And I don't think it's reasonable to heavily discount our very poor test results. And I also think it's unfair to argue that MCAS results are, a screenshot or a snapshot of a particular place in time, when we all can acknowledge that each year of learning is, a building block on the last and a building block for the next. And this data, I think it should be jarring. And if it isn't, that's something we need to take a closer look at. And we certainly can't, dismiss that or spin this type of data based on how we compare to state averages, when historically we, typically compare ourselves, or at least, my family does, to surrounding towns of similar, demographics, socioeconomics, et cetera. And I don't think we've ever strived for slightly above state average, and I don't think we should start. I also feel that, despite being assured that learning loss was a non-entity, I think I heard that again tonight, this MCAS data to me kind of contradicts that. And I think I'm having, I don't want to sound negative at all. I like to think of myself as a realist. And I think I'm having a difficult time, hearing ourselves sort of defend the data and placing, undeserving gold stars, et cetera, instead of kind of owning it and creating a meaningful performance improvement plan academically. I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging that perhaps our school system is significantly trending in the wrong direction, and, identifying ways to positively and quickly impact that. I just think it's okay to sort of own that we're not doing well, and, really kind of make headway in reversing these numbers a bit. It's just, it's difficult to take these steps without, first seriously acknowledging that we do have problems academically here, and excellence is probably not the best descriptor for how we're doing academically. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and raising those concerns. Next is Paul Scott.
Thank you, Chairman Long, and I hate to follow up my wife, since she's a far better public speaker than I am, but just a couple of comments from tonight's meeting. I was looking forward to Assistant Superintendent Driscoll's involvement and focus on data and so on. Tonight, she made the statement that we were right in line with the state average, and I expected some amount of unhappiness or disappointment following that, and I seem to get some that was a positive. I'll be honest, I didn't move to Scituate to be in the state average. The MCAS, I understand the pandemic and the effect that it's had and so on, but Scituate had great advantages over the rest of the state. If you go to the city of Lowell or the city of Leominster or Brockton or Rockland, these schools, these kids don't have two parents that are home. They don't have even two parent families. We paid a couple of $100 a week to have my second grader in a pod 3 times a week working remotely with a former teacher. And I know that other school districts didn't have the financial resources, God bless those parents, to give that to those kids. So if I expected anything, it was that we would far outshine the rest of the state. And to my wife's point, I think we need to make sure we're comparing ourselves to those districts that we should. And I know the Superintendent Driscoll mentioned that the state didn't really provide that information, but going forward, I don't really want to hear about the state average. I don't care what's happening out in Hancock, out in Western Massachusetts. I care about Norwell, Cohasset, Duxbury, these other towns around here where we should be competitive with those folks. And one other point, one of the board members tonight talked about looking for data about happiness or social emotional data. I'd be really interested in how you're going to capture that data in a 13-year-old boy, but I'm hoping we're not going down the path of saying, sure, we didn't compete in the MCAS. Our students did poorly. They're not getting into colleges. They're not excelling at the SATs, but they're really happy. I want my 2 kids and my 3 kids to be happy. That is my ultimate goal. but I hope we're not going down the path of trying to redefine what excellence is. We hear about these 2 pillars that the superintendent talked about. You know what the 3 pillars are? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's what everybody's getting paid to do in our school district. And I think we need to make sure that that's the focus. That's the data we need. That's where the curriculum needs to be focused. The other stuff is great. And if we can add that on, that's fantastic. I want happy kids. I want civil kids. I want kids that appreciate and understand the differences in everybody, but I want them to be smart. It's not that difficult. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, for your comments as well. Seeing no one else, I'll move on in the agenda. The next item is the declaration of surplus with Dr. Dutch.
Okay, if I could, I'm going to share my screen again so you can see the surplus items. So I'm looking to have the following items voted as surplus, and I can provide a little greater detail if you'd like that. There are 6 items: speech and language pro-ed testing materials, 220 copies of Massachusetts Our Home, the 2004 edition, student teacher booklets for K through 4 dibbles, 2 2008 school buses, which are parked over at Hatherley School, a laser cutter model Boss LS 1416, which was purchased for the engineering program, and then various paperback titles of novels, poetry, plays from the English department at Scituate High School. So I'd answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions from the committee?
I guess I have a question about 2 items. The buses, why are we declaring them, surplus?
The buses were buses that were purchased back when the district was buying buses. They are older than 10 years and therefore difficult, if not impossible, to get inspected or get to the point where they can pass an inspection. Currently, they do not run. We've had them towed twice to move them from one storage space to another as they were first taking over the lot at the T station. We had to move them out of there. And then we had to move them away from Town Hall as they needed the space where we were storing them. So now they're over at Hatherley, and hopefully someone will take them, most likely for scrap metal.
So if we declare them surplus, are there any usable parts that we could strip from? Probably not.
No, all of our buses are on a service agreement because we lease them. We get a service agreement with them. So all of the repairs are covered by that agreement. And they wouldn't use parts from a 2008 bus on a 2018 is our oldest bus right now.
Okay, and in the laser cutter is, can you explain why that's surplus from the engineering program?
It was purchased originally, as I understand, and I think Ms. McGuire might be able to fill in the blanks if she's still on. It was purchased for the engineering program by the teacher that was in that program. There isn't anybody who's teaching that program who knows how to use that laser cutter, and that person who originally bought it never used it either before he left and went elsewhere. So it goes unused and really doesn't fit into the scope of the program now because it's not geared towards the engineering as it was originally intended.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
So I guess, sorry if I missed this, Dr. Dutch, so what physically is going to happen with the school buses? Is someone going to come and tow them away, or once
They
we
will.
declare them surplus?
They'll have to tow them away, and do what they will with them from there.
Okay. And same with the laser cutter. So we don't try to sell, we're not trying to sell these. We're just basically giving them away.
The laser cutter, I think, I would suggest that it's about a $3,500 piece of equipment. I would not give that away. I would look for a minimum price on that, but I would come back to you with what's been offered to get your approval, particularly for that item.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
If there's no other questions, I'll take a motion on the surplus items.
I'll make a motion to declare the items presented as surplus.
I second.
Long, yes. Lindblom,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
and Borkowski.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Dutch. So next we have the approval of minutes. We have the minutes in our backup from the September 20th, 2021 school committee meeting. So if there are no questions or changes to the minutes, I'll entertain a motion on them.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 20th, 2021 school committee meeting.
I'll second that.
I'll do a roll call vote. Borkowski?
Yes.
Yates?
Yes.
Lindblom?
Yes.
And Long, yes. So for correspondence in our backup, we did get a mask correspondence from that was shared with the committee. I don't know if people saw it as well, but we did also get a email from Kim Peters earlier today saying that there's going to be a walkthrough of Hadley School. I think it's on October 15th with the advisory board and members of the board of selectmen if they want to attend. Just make sure you respond to Kim on that. So that being said, next on the agenda is the warrant that's in our backup with Dr. Dutchkin.
So we have warrant number S2100928, total amount of $239,279.24, signed by committee member Gates. Out of our non-LEA funds, our revolving account, school lunch, $38,251.48. And then out of our local budget, athletic contracted services, $16,567.38 for Huddle, which is a software for coaches, officials, and our insurance. Special ed services and supplies, $13,688.72 for Pearson testing materials for our school psychologists. Private school tuition, $38,287.10 for Cardinal Cushing School. Collaborative tuition, $30,778 to the Pilgrim Collaborative and the South Shore Educational Collaborative. Contract services for heating, $12,830.58. That was to commercial boiler systems for repairs in various buildings. Central administration copier, $11,127.55. That is our monthly copier lease and usage overage. Transportation, $9,514.19. That's for bus inspections and mailing of the bus passes to all of our students. And then finally, in science supply, $16,308.24 for Inspire Science, which is a software application, and then lab supplies at the high school, for a total local appropriation of expenditure of $188,737.71. Again, happy to answer any questions if you have any on a specific item.
Any questions from the committee? Okay, thank you, Dr. Dutch.
Thank you.
So is there any other business that members of the committee want to bring up in tonight's meeting?
Mike, I just wanted to mention, I guess, I don't know, subcommittee liaison update, whatever it's called.
Peter, you cut out.
Is a presentation to the capital planning committee, which took place last week. Sorry if you lost me for a second. So basically, Superintendent Report and Dr. Dutch presented to capital plan last week, and they voted unanimously to approve it. And that process will continue moving forward. I just want to let everyone know that the capital plan did approve that. And then tomorrow night is the first financial forecast committee meeting, which I've said I generally, whenever I have a chance to say, it's probably the most important relative to our budget. Tomorrow is going to be our initial discussions with, I think it's a total of 11 members involving all different aspects of the town to determine what we could potentially expect in terms of funding from the town side. So that will take place tomorrow night. And I will be attending as a school committee representative, along with Dr. Dutch and Superintendent Report.
And for the capital planning, sorry, for when you cut out, that they approved unanimously the feasibility study for the Hadley Christian School, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thank you for that update. So our next scheduled meeting is October 18th, and then town meeting is, I believe, the following week. On the next agenda, we will have the liaison petitions for the school committee, as well as celebrate student learning from the math department. Are there any other agenda items that the school committee wants to make sure gets put on the agenda? So that concludes our agenda for tonight. If there's nothing else from the rest of the board, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:20.
So moved.
A second.
Roll call vote. Long, yes. Lindblom?
Yes.
Gates?
Yes.
And Borkowski?
Yes.
All right. Thanks to everybody